My experience with the Tomb Raider franchise goes a lot like this. Yeah. Nice. Then I fell in love with the 2013 reboot and most of the subsequent games to follow. I feel like I missed out on some of the games in the middle of the franchise, and since this series is all about revisiting the 7th generation of games that I missed, I thought, why not take a dive in here? This will have heavy game spoilers, and is more of a general conversation about playing Tomb Raider Underworld for the first time, rather than a full review. Underworld, half adventure game, half spider killing simulator, is about the legendary protagonist Lara Croft looking for her mother in Helheim at the bottom of the sea while she's being hunted by a doppelganger or something. I can't fault the game for me being unprepared to play the last game in the Legend trilogy. I went in blind and I had no idea what was going on or who the characters were. Then they introduced a giant bat lady. Aside from me being completely surprised, oh, wait a second. Natla. Yeah. Wait a second, how did I not remember this? Okay, anyways, Bat Lady Natla, I guess her design looks wildly different, but here we are, moving on. And I know the Tomb Raider franchise historically always has supernatural characters or elements in their games, so it actually made me more interested in the game even though I was lost on the story.
Our time is short, so choose your questions carefully.
What do you know about my mother?
The dais you and she found in Nepal, it's part of a travel network, so to speak. It took your mother to Avalon.
But I will say, from what Tomb Raider games I have played, they all have interesting locales, and Underworld is no different. The Mediterranean Sea, Thailand, the Arctic, they all have their own personality and ways to explore. I did enjoy exploring on foot, on motorcycle, even on the underwater levels didn't overstay their welcome, nor were they painful to explore. Water levels are notorious for being janky and unforgiving in video games, but here in Underworld, Lara swims with ease and finesse. I never found myself frustrated, thankfully. Exploring the derelict temples in the jungle or the underwater caverns brought enough variety I never got bored. Now, as far as Lara Croft herself goes, here she's smart, confident, she has that Lara charisma that we all love.
Alright, maybe Avalon is real, but...
Bhagavati of the 7th. It must be referring to the capital of Patala, the lowest infernal world in Hindu tradition. It's a netherworld populated by...
I like her underworld design a lot. It's slick and self-assured, she's not afraid to get her hands dirty, and also not afraid to look good doing it.
For that matter.
Helheim's it. Various myths use different names, but they all apply to the same remnants of the ancient world.
She has great animations. Her jump, her dodge roll, and all of her acrobatics were always fun to watch. The level design here in Underworld can be hit or miss. Overall, I like the vistas themselves, but sometimes I felt like I was doing the same action over and over, which I get, it's part of a Tomb Raider game. You're going to be doing out a lot of the same repetitive actions, but I took notice when I felt like the pillar, box, or ledge from the last level looked very similarly placed in a different level with a different coat of paint. It wasn't all the time, but it was something to notice. However, there are some absolutely great levels here. Escaping from a sinking ship, or running through a burning mansion was high-octane action that felt thrilling to run through. Now, you can't talk about a Tomb Raider game without talking about exploration and puzzles. And thankfully, they're great. They're just enough to make you think for a second or two, but not so long that you're pulling your teeth out. And Lara's jumping is nicely snappy here. One reason the old Tomb Raider games were so hard was because you had to make the jump with 100% precision. Now those gamers are on another level. Here in Underworld, not only are checkpoints more forgiving, but it also feels like Lara knows which ledge you want to grab. And sometimes she had her own ideas, but more often than not, I grabbed the ledge, spinning bar, or beam that I wanted to. I will say, anything you thought you could interact with, you could. A clever design by the developers. I was never lost on what wasn't a ledge, or what rock I couldn't or could grab onto. It was fun exploring, and going through the entire level without dying was satisfying. It felt like everything was coming full circle. The levels, the traversal, and your honed-in skills as an explorer. There were a few nail-biting moments when the cinematic slow motion would start. Your brain starts to panic and you overthink what's happening, all for you just to time a perfect jump. They were used infrequently enough it felt exciting, and they were far more engaging than a quick time event. The combat, however, the combat feels frustrating. It's not necessarily the guns. Doing acrobatics while shooting is fun, but it's hard to enjoy the combat when the camera is so infuriating to use. You will try to aim at an enemy and the camera will just swing wildly around you because you're locked on a target. The camera would often get stuck behind walls or whip itself underneath Lara. Anytime there was combat, I tried to avoid it. Until you get Mjolnir. Then, combat was electric. Throwing lightning at enemies was awesome, and a solid surprise. I honestly thought they would give you the hammer, and then like most games, you can't use it. It does have this slow motion headshot mechanic after you build up some adrenaline. It looks cool, and it's useful for the big baddies, but you have to be so close to the enemy to use it, I felt like it was really never worth the risk. I think my biggest frustration from the game is Lara's fall damage. Like, there were so many times she should have been fine, but she instantly buckles and dies. Like, how can she not die from a 7-foot jump one way, but a 4-foot drop from a ledge from another way? And it felt like I had to jump check every time I left off the ground. So for my final thoughts, after everything, I did enjoy the story. Even though I didn't know it was a direct sequel, it was easy enough to catch on to what was happening. I like the Norse mythology backdrop. Going to Helheim to find her dead mother is a cool concept. I didn't have quite the build-up as most Tomb Raider vets probably had at this point, but I do think it was an emotional delivery. Seeing Lara's disappointment, then rage after being tricked, just shows how layered she is. It was a nice touch. I do wish they would have implemented more with the doppelganger. Maybe a mission where she's stalking you would have been cool. Another thing is that Underworld doesn't actually have any boss fights, and a lot of the enemies are copy and paste. Thankfully, the combat isn't too frequent. The main golden idol here is exploring and solving puzzles. The locations were varied and fun to explore, and Lara looks great and has charisma, as all adventurers should. The combat is a little wonky, the camera is frustrating, and you do frequent a few of the same locations from time to time, but overall I did enjoy myself. It's probably not a Tomb Raider game I will come back to anytime soon, and if you're not a Tomb Raider fan, I'm not sure I could confidently recommend it. It is a short game though, and about an 8 to 10 hour experience, so if you're looking for a quick action adventure game, this could hit that spot for you. Just be aware of those few caveats. Even though I do love the 2013 reboot, I would like to see a return to form in the new Tomb Raider game. So here's to hoping. I'm Tay from Did I Save? Thanks for hanging out.